Okay, I'm going to show an example of working with C Electrical V8R2 and with the 3D Panel Plus. So I'm going to start by creating an example project. So I'm going to use a standard template and I'm going to create a circuit diagram page. And then click OK. So we have the first page, and I'm going to place macros. These are circuits that have already been drawn with part numbers already assigned to these. So I'm going to go into a folder here and I'm going to place incoming power, hitting the space bar, 0, 0 is the insertion point, and then clicking cancel. If I zoom in on these parts, I can see these are separate symbols. And I can see there it's got the product and the type. So it's got parts information already assigned. I'm going to place some motor circuits on this page. And again, I'm going to click cancel to bring in all the default options. And see again that these contactors here have parts information already assigned to those. I'm going to create a few more pages, create a new page. For a variable speed drive. And another page here for a safety relay. And I'm going to add some PLC information to this as well. And with PLCs, we've got a list of all the I/O and their function descriptions. I'm going to create a new page and show some of the inputs connected to one of these cards. So with the advanced level package, I can navigate and I can see that this contact or this input here is displayed on this particular page. With this project, we've got a variety of different wire signal types set up. So we've got the numbering already configured. I can generate this again, or I could delete all of the wire numbers so that everything is blank, and then just show an example of assigning wire numbers by generating all signals, clicking OK. And again, we've got all the wires with unique numbering on there. So we've got a project with parts assigned. And I'm going to add a 3D panel for this. So I'm going to right click on 3D panel, add a new page, and call it 3D layout. So this opens up a new environment. I'm going to choose a simple or standard net wiring template and then click OK. The net wiring will take into account equipotential links and work out the shortest distance routing on the 3D panel. So this is brought in the 3D environment. I'm just going to minimize the nets for the moment. I'm going to start just by placing an enclosure on there. So I'm going to go down to the Schneider universal enclosures to begin with. I'm going to go to a spatial steel floor, spatial SF, and we're going to just choose this one, which is a 1200 by 600, which is 400 deep. It appears on my cursor and I can click and place it down, and this is an assembly, so when I place it down it's made up of multiple items. If I click on the door, I can see the door, the roof and the whole chassis is separate items. If I double click, I can select or reinsert one of the items and move that around. Now with a lot of the Schneider equipment we have additional mating information attached. So in this situation, I can turn on the snapping to make use of the mating snaps. When I double click to place the door, I can see as soon as I move over an area, I get a mating space. As I move to the bottom, I've got the hinge on the left hand side, move to the top and the hinge is on the right. And a simple click and it gets inserted in the right place. I'm just going to select some accessories, and I'm going to put 2 side panels in here. They come as a kit, and again, as I hover over the side, I can place those in, and I can see I've actually got 2 there. I'm going to double click on the spare one, and I'm just using the wheel to rotate this, and I'm going to drop it on that side. Very quick and easy. Within the 3D environment, we've also got an explorer which shows us the structure of the elements in the background. So here we have the whole structure of the chassis with the roof. And if I click on one of the elements, it highlights it on this side, and I can choose the lamp to turn this off. So I can now see the enclosure in the background. What I'm going to do is now place a gear plate. So I'm going to scroll up to Common Accessories, go to the mounting plates, steel plate, and I need one that's 1200 by 600, so I'm just looking down the list here, and I can see that this one should be the right size. I can see a mounting strip, this light blue strip in the bottom left, and when I click on that, I'm then presented with a series of snap points. These are mounting positions within that area. So I can click at any point, and that snaps into position. Let me just turn the grid off for the moment. If I want it in a new position, I just double click to reinsert it and repeat that, but I could choose a different position within the panel. So we've now got the enclosure with a mounting plate. I'm going to highlight the mounting plate, and in the Explorer, I'm going to right click on it and choose Hide All Except That's Selected. I'm now going to select the actual mounting plate, and it's important in 3D to set the surface that you're actually going to be placing items onto. So I've selected the outside here. I'm going to right click and set this as the working plane. So now I can go into the cabinet section, and I can put some DIN rail on here to mount some of the components. So when I place the DIN rail, I can then change the size and right click to place another one. Each time I'm placing it, I can just click to snap it into place. Once I've got some DIN rail, I can then go to the components panel, which at the moment is just showing the mechanical elements that I've placed for the enclosure, the backplate, and the DIN rails. I'm now going to right click in the components section and load the components from the project, either from the function, location, or product level. I'm going to choose function and say load that top level, which is empty at the moment, and it's going to list all the components that I've got in my project. If I place a component, I can simply click on it, and if I position this down on the page, I can see that's placed on there. Now at any point as I'm placing elements down, I can select the back plate, right click, let's just right click a bit further up, and I can show the drill holes and also generate a plan which I can output to Steinhauer or Perforex with all of the drilling information, the outline of the components. If I do the same thing here for Perforex, you can see each of the elements and where the drill holes should be on that mounting plate. So that can be saved as a DXF file and sent to a CNC machine for that. If I've got DIN rail mounted items, such as this safety relay, when I place it, if it's near to a DIN rail, it snaps into position. So each component, if it has a rail mounting, it will snap onto the nearest DIN rail that you place it. If I choose the DIN rail itself, click on a component, then it automatically attaches to that particular one. Now this Q2 device has several components. It's got an auxiliary set of contacts. I'm going to say no for the moment and just show you that when I select it in this list, I can select the auxiliary item and tap K on the keyboard. The letter K. It's not side mounted, so I'm going to tap K again, and it's not mounted there. And finally I've got this position here on the top, and I can say yes, that's where it's mounted. So multiple parts can be assigned to symbols. Each can have their own symbol, and you can select those and insert them as a group. Here I'm going to select not the used option, but I'm going to select a group of these items and click on the DIN rail, and then click on insert. And this time it's going to place all of these. Now it's not had enough space, so it's going to give this one to me, so I manually position this one where I actually want it to be on the actual DIN rail. I think that one should fit. On any piece of DIN rail, you always have the option of using the rail tools to organize left, right, or align evenly. So here I can align these to the left. So it's a very simple click and place procedure to insert all the elements. On this one, I'm actually going to place this one on the back plate. I'm going to rotate it by choosing Z to rotate it about the Z axis. And I can see that's now placed on the back plate. With terminals, I can select an individual terminal, and if there's a group of the terminals on the same strip, I can say yes to insert as a group. All my X1s, all my X2 terminals, just a single X3, and there's the rest of the terminals for X4. So I've placed most of the components that I wanted to. I've still got some push buttons. I'm going to place those in a minute. But for now, if I go down to the net, when I right-clicked, loaded the components from the project, this also brought in all of my nets. So in here I can click on a particular net and it shows me all components that are connected at that particular potential. So this is using the net template. At the moment there are no wires, so it's not actually worked out the from to the best order to connect these together. So if I right click and say route all nets, I can click on yes, and it will route all the components that are placed on the drawing. Okay, so it's a bit of a mess. I should really put some cableways on there. So I'm going to go up to cabinet, and this time I'm going to draw some cable channels. So I'm going to go down to 25 by 50, go to a front view, and I'm just going to place these on. I'm just using the grid that's on there at the moment, but I could use various alignment tools. So I'm just right clicking to place each of these. And this last one, I'm actually going to rotate by typing Z. And then I'm going to use an object snap to align these up to the end of this object here. Very quick and easy. And I'm going to do a similar thing at the top, just by aligning it to the top on that position there. I'm going to right click and I've got another vertical section. I'm going to line it to there. And then drag this down again using the object alignment. Now that I've got the cableways in there, I can right click on the nets, and this time I'm going to go to reroute all of the nets. It will only route visible objects, so I'm making sure everything is visible. I'm not turning anything off. Click on yes. These are all now routed through the cableways. I'm going to click on a couple of these cableways, holding down Control, and just show the transparency so that we can see the wiring within each of these. If I click on one of the cableways, we have some cabling information here on the top right on the cabinet section where we can show the wiring. So I can see a side view of this cableway. The orange area is my free area, so this is leaving 20% free within this cableway, and it's showing the number of wires at each particular point. As I drag the slider across to the right, I can see the blue bar in the background showing me where I am within that cableway and the number of wires that are at that particular point. So at the moment I have plenty of space in there. If any of those were going into the orange area, then I would have a problem with the amount of space available. I'm going to go back to the Explorer, turn on the rest of the elements. I turned them off for a while, so I'm going to go to Show All, and I've now got the complete enclosure there. I'm going to click on the door, and again I can see this highlighted, and I'm going to make the outside of this the working plane. So now I'm going to go back to the components and just place some of the push buttons. Now the object snap is quite useful, but in this case it's actually bringing up the objects in the background. I'm going to go to the draw command, across to snapping, and in the bottom right I'm going to choose the snap options. And down here I'm going to detect only components which are on the active plane. So now if I click to place this push button, I can see it's highlighting the middle of the door. So I can click a particular point, or I can hit the tab and say I want an offset. Minus 100 goes to the left, and the same thing again. This time it's in line with it in the middle of the door. This one I can place at the same place, same position perhaps, in line in the middle of the door. Hit the tab, put 0, and then put it down 100 in the Y direction. And then once more 100 semicolon 0. So I've now positioned these exactly where I want. Again, I can select this as a mounting plane, right click and say show me the drill holes for this, and I can export this information. Here I can see the outline of the components as well as the drill holes. Just to check if I've got a manual way of doing this, I can right click and go down to generate drill hole chart, and this time I can see a marker with each of these and a table on the right show me the position and the size of these holes that I'm going to be using. Now that I've got the door on there, I'm going to go back to the Explorer and just turn the view of it off, and I'm going to go back into the nets and reroute all of the nets. I'm going to click on yes, and I can see that is now wired. Now of course I'm going to have problems opening that door, so really I want to route the wiring across to the side and onto the back of the door. So if I look from the top, I'm going to say take this out of this piece of cableway in the background, go across to the right and up the side of the door. Now to do that I can go back to cabinets and I can define a manual route path. So define a route path. Now to do this simply I'm going to turn on an endpoint snap and say right between a midpoint, so that's this midpoint between 2 points, between here and here, I'm going to go to a top view and route this across to the side. I'm then going to go to a right view and then go up to the back of the door, back onto the front view. So I'm now at the height of the door, going to go across. Let's just zoom in a bit, dragging the arrow up and across, and I'm going to right click actually at this point, click again on the route path and start it at this junction here. I've got the end point snap on, so I can simply snap to there and drag across to there. One more from this end point here, and I'm just going to pull it out to the left a bit and give it the option of going down the center as well. So if I rotate this a bit, you can see that this route goes out to the side and onto the back of the door. If I now go back into nets, right click and reroute all the nets one more time. And I can see now that all the wiring is routed via this path. Any wire that I've got selected I can highlight, right click, go to the wiring section, and I can say I want to change the route path. That will highlight the selected route path, and I can see in the background where that's going, down to this variable speed drive. When I click on the next path you can see alternatives. So these two are exactly the same length. I could choose either of these, and again this one is the same and this one is a slightly longer route, but it might be that that's a preferred route. So at any point I can click on a particular route, click on select path and fix that information. From this information, from the wiring, we can also choose the printing information and say print report, and I'm going to choose a wire routing report. If I double click to run that, I've now got a list of all the wires, their wire number, where they come through, the routes, so this is the name of each of the cable trays, the size, the color of the wire, and then the length in millimeters. The length can either be altered when you run the settings for the wiring by defining an extra percentage length to every wire, or a fixed extra length. On a component, when we look at its properties, we can see it's got a list of all the connection points that are on there. So if I click on here, I can see highlighted in red this first connection point. And at this particular point, I can also see it's got an added length for the wire as well. So it's already got 17 millimeters additional that's been added to that length of wire. So there's several places we can adjust the total lengths of wires to make sure we get the right amount. I can also set the connector type, the wire marking, and the maximum number of wires at any particular point. So quite a lot of configuration available there. If I want to go to the next level, I can also save this model as a shop floor. So I can go to File, Save As, Panel Shop Floor Model. I'll call it Demo 1. And that's now saved. So I can close this down, and this is still part of the same project. So I can click on Yes. And that's still within the same project file. If I minimize this for the moment, this is a separate module. This is you can rent it on a yearly basis. It's the same interface as the 3D module, but it's a read-only environment, which allows you to check all of the wiring and confirm when it's been completed. I'm going to go to File, Open, go into Demo 1. So the shop floor module environment looks the same as the 3D environment. You can have it grayed out or visible as normal. It's a read-only environment, so I can't move these elements. But we have an Explorer exactly the same as in the 3D panel, which shows us a list of all the components. And each one has a mounted verification. So when the chassis has been assembled, when the roof has been attached, when all the elements have been attached, here when the door has been, the handle has been added to the door and each of the push buttons have been mounted, each one can be verified. So the Explorer itself allows you to view, to turn on and off different items, but also to verify when they've been assembled. And then importantly, if we turn back the grayed out section, we can highlight a component, and in the wiring information we see a list of all the wires that are going to this particular component. So by clicking on the bar at the top, I can view this grey wire and how it connects between these two devices. This is touchscreen enabled, so if you have a touchscreen, you can manipulate this and twist it around and zoom in and out. And then once that wire has been connected, you click on the next one. And here we'll see another wire which is now connected from this power supply to the next device. We can also filter this information by size, color, or signal type. So here we can go to color, and on the pull down box I can say filter all the brown wires. And now I can click and show all of the brown wires and select each one individually and confirm they've been wired. So the handy thing at this point is that I can leave this, come back to it the next day, and I know exactly which ones have been wired and which ones are still needed. The verification that these have been done is then saved and sent back to the 3D model, so we can verify that this has been wired in the order in which it's been specified. So taking the particular route that's been specified, so you can make sure that it's consistent.